Okay, we're looking to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. Today we have a follow-up that I promised you guys in terms of this brand new King Seiko KSK reissue / reimagining in the SPB281 and getting some comparisons, whether it be comparing the size, comparing the value. We have quite a few options here from Grand Seiko, from Citizen, from Seiko, whether it be in the Presage line or even the old school SARB line. So looking forward to kind of sharing that with you guys. But very quickly, did want to thank, of course, the sponsor of the segment, Wrist Candy Watch Club. I don't do, paid reviews or anything like that, so it's nice to have certain segments sponsored so that I'm not just doing video, reviews. I can actually get to chatting with you guys a little bit on other subjects like this one, this little follow-up, a little bit more of a deep dive. I know a lot of people were unhappy with the King Seiko pricing. I recall that from my last King Seiko review of the limited edition, which was much more expensive, but did have a thinner, higher beating movement. People still weren't happy with that. They wanted something cheaper, or they wanted something even more expensive. And if they wanted something cheaper, then there's the Presage line. If they wanted something more expensive, there's Grand Seiko. So, and there's definitely a balance to all of this, and I'm looking forward to kind of just getting these in hand and kind of laying them out to you guys side by side next to each other so you can get a little bit idea of the size and the scale, because that's a part where I think this new SPB King Seiko really stands out, is that it is actually really, really wearable, and the bracelet is extremely impressive. And I think it's something that gets overlooked because people are so focused on the movement. And yeah, this movement is in-house and has an extended power reserve, and it's in expensive watches. The next release with this particular no-date movement is also $1,700, and it's not even a King Seiko. It's a Presage that is in the same type of case style and bracelet finish as every other kind of Presage within that tier as before. So hopefully you guys will get a better idea as the market continues to adjust. But with that said, let's go ahead, zoom the camera out, get these all in hand, and take a closer look. All right, so let's probably start new King Seiko versus the last King Seiko that they released, which was the first one in a really long time, which was this guy right here. Now, this is on this side, your SPB281, and then here on the other side, you're going to have your SJE083 or SDKA001, and this costs $3,300. Doesn't come with a bracelet. It has a fully polished case, although the style was a little bit of... Let me just give it a quick wipe. Jeez Louise. Sorry, guys. I mean, this thing, I don't want to not show you guys that it's full potential. So here we go. Sorry. And there's also, of course, full review on the channel. This one's fully polished. The bevels are insane. This actually does have a hard coating, which I'd say is a positive. It has the Dia Shield hard coating. It also has a 6L35 movement in it, and it has slightly different, not just different dimensions, but different proportions. As you can see, the dial is much more expansive, and it's definitely a little bit more simple in kind of its execution. Instead of the box domed sapphire, it has an actual more of a clear bevel on it there, and it's just a little bit more angular in general. I did swap this out to a different leather strap just because the alligator one that came with it, just it was just a little bit too dressy. This one for me is a little bit more casual, but you can see very similar look. I do enjoy that this cheaper model has a variance in the it has brushed and polished, so you do get to kind of take in the shape a little bit more. Although I will say there's something about these these compound contours on here and facets in the high polish that is just, there's a kind of a jeweled look to it, which I really, really like. But you can see here that it is a slightly larger case. like 37 some change versus 38 and some change, but it's more so the proportions. You can see the wider shoulders on the lugs here, as well as the more expansive dial, which, you know, contribute to an overall larger wear. Although I don't find this to be oversized or anything like that, I will say that this new one definitely hits more of a vintage scale, and it just has a bit more of a, almost, I guess you could say, like a date just. You know how those are just kind of, they look small, they're supposed to look small, but then they have kind of that glittery type of bracelet and whatnot, plays with the light. This hits a lot of those same tones, which is a comparison that I didn't think of before. But yeah, there's your other King Seiko versus King Seiko. One thing also to note, you can see the handset is a little bit closer to what you would expect from the original there, where it has the faceted doffing hands versus the like the kind of center line there, the center fold. So of course it's much more expensive, but still a great piece. You can see also a slightly smoother sweep there at 8 ticks per second, 4 hertz versus 6 ticks per second, 3 hertz. Okay, next comparison I think would be great is this great Grand Seiko SARB035, which is on loan in right now from Belmont Watches. And this is where I think it's surprisingly similar, guys. Look at that. They are pretty much the same size. Like, it's uncanny, really. The Grand Seiko lists out for $4,900, but it's completely sold out. This is a limited model, but they actually do have an their SBGW275, which is about $4,300, and then if you wanted to get a compatible bracelet, it's about another $1,500 to source one of those. So a lot more expensive to replicate something that this King Seiko is already giving you, and also you're getting no date versus no date. These are the only 2 no date models here because it's just not a common affair from Seiko to do no dates. There's not actually a lot of brands that will do that outside of, the more heritage focused hip brands. But you can see fully polished also, so you I think that's another thing where you're getting a little bit extra. Of course, the dial, although it's executed to a very high level, not quite as difficult because you're just getting vertical brush here versus you're getting this beautiful frosted, kind of washy paper texture, which has become so popular as of late. But when you look at the handsets and everything, they're actually very similar. They have the same kind of folded center line there. You're just going to get a curvature of the handset that matches the curvature of the dial, versus here it's going to be more of a flat handset on a flat dial. So very, very similar in terms of the size, in terms of, look at that, even the thickness there. And this is a manual wind, gorgeous movement. This is an automatic, so you got to think, like, that's actually pretty impressive on the King Seiko's part to be such a close silhouette there in terms of what you're getting, what it represents, being instantly recognizable as a Seiko. So very, very cool from that side of the house. Now, next in line, let's go with a classic here, guys. The SARB035. These go for about $600 to $700 now on the market. Actually, let me switch sides because that's the way we were doing it earlier. We'll keep the King Seiko on the left. As you can see here, very, I'd say, comparable in size, and I think that's something why people are, I think they have their ideas a little bit misaligned in their expectations, because they're like, oh man, this is like the rebirth of a SARB, but it's $1,700. And the SARB was such a great value at around $300, although they're going for a lot more expensive now that they've been discontinued for a while. But they do have a very similar size there. It does have the older 6R15 movement, so it doesn't have the extended power reserve, but it still has the Sprawn mainspring and everything like that. So you do get those nice properties there in terms of anti-magnetism. But in terms of their silhouettes, again, very, very similar. I'd say some of the negatives would be this one is discontinued, and obviously the quality level isn't quite as high. But it does cost a lot less, and it has 20mm lugs versus the 19mm lugs you're going to see here on the new. So very similar. Obviously much different in terms of like the grammar of design. This is a lot more flowy, less angular. So ultimately, and also it has more of an off-white dial, which is going to be, just a touch less versatile versus the beautiful silver dial here, which can, play white, it can play gray, as you can see, it can play kind of steely blue. So it does a lot there. Next in line is going to be this bad boy. Now, this is one that I added to the collection not too long ago. I've added an aftermarket strap and put a Grand Seiko buckle on it, and it's given me a lot. It's scratched a lot of itch, and it's a very similar size as well. The only problem with this bad boy, this is Seiko Presage SARB035 or the SARY147 Japanese Zen Garden. These go for around $300 to $400. The main drawback is going to be that the crystal is a hardlex, and that the movement is only a 4R series versus the 6R. So you're not going to be getting this brawn hairspring and or any of kind of the extra goodies that go with the 6R. I know a lot of people just think 6R is, there's not a lot of good that comes with it. But you got to remember, there's also the 4R movements, which are a step down. You do get this really nice kind of sandy finished frosted dial there, which looks great. Very similar in terms of the indice layout. Definitely screams Seiko. You're getting, of course, an applied Seiko logo, so it does compete pretty well there. But fully polished case, ultimately a lot more rounded, and you're also getting a date. The handset, not quite as iconic to Seiko anyway. It's a little bit more bland. But a very handsome piece, and one that I do enjoy wearing, that is not super expensive, that is also quite rare, and I think merits a nice conversation when you do wear something like that. Okay, down to the last few. Let's go with this bad boy here, which a lot of people were really... It was the last watch that everybody was really upset about the price, because essentially it was just a more expensive SARX for a lot of people. So this is your Seiko Presage SJE073 or the SARA015, $2,200. It does have an increased cost and a larger, flatter aesthetic. You can see the dial is much more expansive, and because of that 6L35 movement, it is quite thin, and very, very thin, honestly. This watch is one of the reasons why I probably will never buy a 40mm Grand Seiko, because I have this. It's about 40mm, and it's thinner than pretty much any Grand Seiko on the market. Beautiful movement, beautiful, bracelet, very similar in terms of the fit and finish. Mostly on the finishing side, the fit probably isn't quite as tight or as upscale as a Grand Seiko, but this pretty much gives me everything that the mainstream Grand Seiko gives me without it being so mainstream, and it actually costing less, still having the 4 hertz movement, so 8 ticks per second, thermally blued hand, applied everything, beautiful dial there. So this is giving me a whole lot for the money. And now, looking back, this is actually kind of a deal, because it costs less than the other King Seiko, which came on a strap. So, and it comes with this great, the whole setup with the bracelet and everything, and then also DeaShield coated for extra protection. And you can see when we laid them, put them next to each other there, much different in terms of the scale and kind of the proportions, but looks really great. So now we'll get down to the last comparable here. Let me just, I'm just going to tighten my gloves, pull them back up on my wrists here off camera, as well as just build some more suspense. Citizen NB1050. dash 59A, about $400 to $500 on the market there. It does have a longer lug to lug, longer links in general as well, and there's no half links, but it does cost a lot less. It also does have that 9011 movement, which is very, very nice. Also has loom, has a date window, Duratech hard coating. This thing's pretty sweet. Let's go ahead and take a look at the movement here. And as you can see, very nice, higher beats, beating at the more standard 8 ticks per second, 4 hertz. It has loom, a little bit more day-to-day, no sign crown, but it does have beautiful finishing there, as you can see. Great transitions between brushed and polished. Really fine brushing here on these links. So very nice from that perspective. And then you put it next to here. Very similar, guys. Like, these are, I'd say, very comparable. And one is a lot cheaper. And I think it's that's very cool on Citizen's part. You're still getting the applied logo. You're getting the higher, smoother beat. And yeah, I would say aesthetics wise, the King Seiko is, for me anyway, easily a lot better looking and more complex within its finishing. But the Citizen is doing a lot for not a lot of money. This thing is packing in a ton of value. It does have, kind of a longer lug to lug, although here you are getting a bit of a male end link, so it does extend the case out here, a little bit more prominent on the male end link. Oh, little piece of fuzz there. Okay, sorry about that. But yeah, these are very comparable, so I could easily see people cross shopping these two. So for everybody that wants something that's a little bit higher beat, maybe a little bit larger, maybe a little bit more modern, the Citizen is, I think, a very strong option. But it's not, it's just a Citizen. There's nothing in terms of horological significance, the story, none of that, which you do kind of get with the King Seiko if you're into that, right? If you're into the story that goes behind it and the lineage and the history, the Citizen is just a little bit more of, hey, this is a fun watch that they designed. It's not really calling out too much from the past, more so just filling a space within the market, although very strong case for it. And this is a beautiful watch, and I kind of recommend this watch often as like the new SARB, in terms of like the amount of bang per buck you're getting, and then also within that silhouette, being kind of that everyday dress watch that can be worn with, but it still has certain drawbacks. So in this case, very similar to the SARB, having the drawback of no half link, so you can't dial in the fit too well, especially considering how long that these links are. So versus here, the links are quite short, which does help. And then you're not getting any micro adjust within a clasp, but you're also getting a much finer execution on the folding mechanism versus the more standard clasp here, which predominantly is going to be stamped. Even if it's well finished, although it does have the nice milled folding section, it doesn't kind of, and then there's the gap thing that gets on a lot of people's nerves. I can live with it, but there's no gap here because of the way that closes. And you can see, again, overall just more complex. So this, I think, is a really nice kind of side by side. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below in terms of size, value, what versus what, because this is a lot of fun for me to do, especially when I think about this Grand Seiko and some of the other iterations of this particular one, and trying to source this, adding a bracelet to essentially have something that's very close to this, which would cost a lot more, but actually how much better would it be at double or triple the cost at the end of the day. So that's definitely something to think about. And then, you know, we also do still have these kind of less common gems that are out there that can give you a lot of what you're getting here in terms of the wearability, in terms of the aesthetic, but for a lot less. And, you know, sure, it doesn't say King Seiko on the dial, it says Presage, but this is, you know, no Presage to sneeze at. This is actually a really fun, well-designed model that I think looks really, really great. But at the end of the day, this is the honeymoon that I'm on, is with this gorgeous piece here. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked the video, please hit like, and if you haven't already, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.